Okay, everyone, we are going to try this again. Let's give us a second to put a link in our previous attempt.
Because the YouTube app is stupid.
Yeah, and it's not working. And it's pretty clear that no one's seeing this one. It's too bad because we had a good crew in the other one. What did you do with the chat on that one? Because we needed to tell people in that chat. Oh, somebody's here.
Share.
Oh, there we go. We're sharing the link in the previous
Chat.
Yeah. In the previous chat. Hopefully everyone who's over there will come over to this one and we can try this again. Anyway, not our best start, but now we got a crew in here. Hi guys, how's
thanks
it going?
guys. Thanks
Sorry
for bearing with us.
Technology is terrible. It was very frustrating because we had it set up properly. It was showing in horizontal and then Mackie went to Instagram, which was a mistake.
It was a mistake. I acknowledge it.
Anyway, so let's chat.
Let's
First
chat.
stream in a long time.
It has been a while. When was the last time we did one?
I don't know, like April or something, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a long time. Can you hear us okay? We had to switch to the computer, which doesn't always do the best on the audio, but I feel like someone would be complaining by now if you couldn't hear us. So it says after Moab Rocks.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah,
and they
April.
can hear us.
Cool.
Excellent.
Ooh. Anyway, like I said, this is why we don't usually do live streams because something always goes wrong and then we get frustrated.
Yeah,
cool. They can hear us. Awesome. So today we wanted to talk about Marji Gesick mainly. We'll take some questions from the chat, but we are going to try to stay mostly on topic. I have this whole sheaf of questions from our patrons and also just questions that got repeated over and over again, either in the YouTube comments.
Slide this.
Let's be centered.
There we go.
In the YouTube comments or on Instagram or on Patreon. So we're going to try to hit all the points. We are going to try to keep this to like an hour 15 or so. So we will try to stay on topic, which I know is sort of hard for us. Yeah, it's not. We're not off to the best start with that. But I mean, I think first, just show off. Mackie needs to show off his belt buckle. Got some hardware.
Yeah.
Not many of those floating around. Only 12 guys.
Yeah.
Got the 2024.
And I got to watch him stamp that into the buckle, which was pretty darn cool.
Yeah, super cool.
I think you should show that because there are even fewer of those.
That's true.
Floating around. Significantly.
So there is a cash purse for the Marji Gesick. It is $1 for the winning woman and $1 for the winning man. And it is signed by Todd and Danny. Or at least it says blame Todd and blame Danny on it. So.
And we blamed both of them.
Many times.
Numerous times.
So yeah. Awesome. Cool. We got like 179 people in here. That's
pretty
awesome.
You guys are amazing.
If you are in here, give this a thumbs up because especially since we fumbled the first live stream attempt, it will be hard to get people back in here. So
I'm just
smash the like button. Mackie's going to post the new link on Instagram real quick.
Yeah.
And then we will get into the juicy questions, of which there were a lot of questions. We are still going to do a recap video. We just wanted to give ourselves another week to get that done, basically. It's been a little crazy. The Marji video was the most time we have ever spent, I think, on a video.
On a single video, yeah.
I did several days of like 12-hour editing days, which I was kind of joking that didn't have much balance in my life for a while there because it was like ride bike for 12 hours, edit video for 12 hours. Anyway, yeah, so we're still going to do that recap video. We'll get more into like the numbers of like how we trained for Marji and how we fueled, but today we'll just keep it in normal and hit the highlight reel a little bit and answer those questions that people have. And I've already seen a repeat in the chat of the very first question that I have on our sheet. So
dang. Guess we should start there.
And unsurprisingly, this question is, do we agree with Jeremiah Bishop's assessment that this is the hardest single-day race in North America?
It certainly is the hardest single-day race I have ever done.
I think that's pretty true. I think
Yeah.
anything that's harder, like, really starts to push the boundaries of like what is a single day race. Like, what percentage of your racers have to finish in 24 hours to like call it a single day?
Because I mean, technically, the cutoff here
is 25 hours, right? So that might be pushing it a little bit too.
Yeah.
I do think Marji Gesick, it's part of the National Ultra Endurance Series. Like, it sort of has sort of a normal 100-miler format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's definitely like the hardest one in the US that follows that normal format. I would say probably the one that like pushes that might be the Vapor Trail. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It's 125 miles and it starts at 10 p.m. at night, which I think again kind of pushes the boundaries of the format there a little bit. Like, are those the same things?
Yeah.
Apples, oranges,
bananas.
Yeah. So we had a lot of questions about the hardness of this race.
Yeah. You should read some. Oh, I'll read some.
Okay.
All right. Travis asks, how hard was this race compared to others that you have done? For
Very
single
hard.
day races, the hardest I have ever done.
Yeah.
Personally.
Maybe just read all of these because I think the answer is going to be kind of the same for like a lot of these.
Okay, fair enough. How much? Wait, except for that, or including that?
Paraphrase that.
Paraphrase that. Long. Yes. Okay. Why is it so hard, harder than Leadville, and takes so much longer when Leadville is at altitude, etc.?
Good question.
Actually, wait. I think we could answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there are 10 million turns. Honest to God, that's why this race takes so long. Is because there are 10 million turns. Leadville, I think there's like 3 turns. Someone, I think Russell's in the chat. How many turns are there in Leadville?
Yeah, Russell did Leadville this year. You have to U-turn at the end. Yeah, Leadville, you have consistent climbs and consistent descents. Marji, you do not have consistent climbs or consistent descents. There are tons and tons and tons of turns, and you have to be paying attention to follow the arrows. Whereas my understanding is that Leadville, like, you basically just go out and it's very obvious where you're going, and then you turn around and it's very obvious where you're going. So Russell asks, having done the race, can it be spreadsheeted?
I mean, a little bit.
We kind of tried.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's just like a lot of variables. Yeah, Russell backs us up. You can go miles without a turn.
Yeah, okay. There we go.
I mean, I think Leadville, like, it definitely is kind of a gravel road race that's like just rough enough that like a mountain bike is maybe faster. And that's why we see a lot of guys really pushing the boundaries of like, what is a mountain bike with Leadville?
Yeah.
You would not do Marji on a gravel bike. There was a guy out there on a recumbent. I mean, he was going to be out there for a long time.
Yeah.
So props to him.
Big props.
But I would say,
sorry, my phone is making noise. Be silent, phone. I'm working.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions. Question from Brandon. He says, oh, and actually Mark also, basically, compared to a stage race.
Yeah.
Compared to Breck Epic, for example, how hard is Marji? And that's actually a question that came up from a lot of people, is like, hardest single day race, but is it harder than a multi-day cross-country stage race like Breck?
I think there are just different flavors of hard at
the
end of the day. Like, I think it also depends like what you like, what you're used to, what you're good at.
Yeah.
There's something very, very punishing about getting up in the morning on day 4 of a stage race.
That's true.
And you don't have to experience that. There's something kind of nice about like, I'm going to start and go until I'm done.
And then I'm done.
You know? So I think like from a mental perspective, like a stage race, especially a hard stage race like Breck Epic, you know, again, it depends what you're used to. It depends what you enjoy.
Depends what you're trained for.
Yeah, I think it's a little hard to compare. I will say, like, riding your bike for 4 to 6 hours is not the same as riding your bike for 11 to 20 hours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, Marji would probably be harder than a stage race. I think the other thing, like for us, I do think doing a full-on 24-hour solo would probably be harder than Marji Gesick and technically a single day.
That's a good point.
But also, like a lot of people, it takes them 24 hours to do Marji, and Marji is a lot harder than most 24-hour courses, right? So
Yeah,
like that's
the
sort of
trails are
hard to
harder. Yeah.
hard to compare there. Yeah.
I think the thing that we've both realized is not sleeping is what makes racing really hard for me. Like, so 24-hour races, like really, really hard because of the not sleeping. Vapor Trail would be really hard for me because of the starting at 10 p.m. and like going through the night. I don't mind riding at night. I like riding with lights, but the not sleeping, that is really, really rough. And that's what I like about both stage races, where you like do a race and then you get time to recover, as well as Marji. In the times that we did it, is we got to like race our bikes and then go to sleep. I think we both found, according to our Whoops, which we wear, which are like, you know, fitness trackers, that even though Marji was like significantly harder in terms of like calories burned, distance, time, all that kind of stuff than some 24-hour races we've done on teams, the next day we were toast, but then like the day after that, we recovered faster and felt better because we were able to like go to sleep that night. Whereas the 24, it's like you get an hour of sleep and then you know. So I think really it makes a big difference, the sleeping, for me.
Yeah, so we got a question from James who says, how much benefit do you think local knowledge is worth? 20 minutes. We're actually going to touch on this a little bit later with the old can Sid get a buckle question, which we are saving for just on there because that's probably the most commonly asked question.
Yeah.
But I think the local knowledge helps, and I think we can answer. We had a lot of questions about the course marking, and this is something I wanted to talk about because I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding in our video. We both kept saying like, oh, when we're not following this person, we keep getting lost. And I think a couple people heard that and were like, the course isn't well marked, like you could actually get lost. And I think what we were referring to more was like we go the wrong way for like 10 seconds.
Missing
or
turns.
Not even 10 seconds.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not getting lost, it was missing turns.
Or just seeing the turns so late that you had to like slam on the brakes and lose a lot of speed, which is frustrating when you're racing.
Yeah.
But I never felt in danger of being lost in the woods. We had the GPS track.
Yeah. And we did, both of us passed guys or saw guys who were like, I think I'm lost. And we were like, ooh, sorry to hear that. But man, that course was so well marked.
Yeah.
And especially if you combined it with your GPS, like you immediately knew that you were not on the course. Because either you were like, oh, I'm not on the course according to my cycling computer, or you like saw a wrong way arrow. Because not only did they have arrows for all the turns, they had big like wrong way X's right past the turns. So that
Yeah, so it would be hard to get lost for real out there. Some people did, but honestly, that's true of every race we ever go to. There's always at least one person.
Yeah.
I will say they do warn you, like, have the GPS, like you were saying.
So how much is knowing it worth? I think knowing that course well would be worth maybe 20-ish minutes. I think that's a pretty good estimate.
Yeah, I think that's true. And honestly, that's less because of the wrong turns and more because you just know when you can go fast. Because I did a lot of like, especially on descents, you'd like start to pick up some speed and be like, I could really rail, but like the last time I did that, I blew the corner, you know? So you kind of like keep it in check. If you knew like, oh, there's not a turn right up here, or like, I know I'm going to see this big tree before the turn, like that would help a lot. Yeah.
Somebody asks, Sid won the women's race but didn't get a buckle.
Yes, we're going to get to that.
Well, we should just explain why.
Yeah, so the buckle is for under 12 hours.
Yeah, buckle is a buckle time, which is 12 hours.
Yeah.
And so she did not go under 12 hours, therefore did not get a buckle. Somebody else just mention that also in the comments. Excellent.
So we've had a couple questions about training.
Wait, let me get one more. Mark had a question and said, talk us through how much further 100 miles felt on winding trail and punchy hills versus 100 miles on a dirt track or road, or 100 miles on pavement. Yeah. Well, it's kind of what we were talking about, like Leadville versus, like Leadville, definitely harder than doing it on a paved road, 100 miles on a paved road.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Way much harder.
But much easier than constantly turning back and forth, up, down, that Marji is. So
yeah, I mean, just to put it this way, we did a mostly paved, some gravel 100-mile ride at endurance pace. In other words, didn't feel that hard, and it took us 6 hours. This was like me burying myself for 13 hours, 12 hours and 57 minutes
to go 100 miles.
Yeah. To go the same distance. So it really is, like, mountain biking is never just about, it's never just about the distance, is it? You know, that's why we love it, right? It's not all the same. It's not all smooth and flowy.
Well, and if it was just like pedal for 100 miles, you could do it on a trainer and then it'd be consistent every time. I will never do that. I'm just going to let you guys know. Never going to happen.
Thank you.
Ever. Lenny asked if you could design your own race, what would it look like? We are going to answer that.
Yeah, that was a
later.
question we got as well. And honestly, like, I'm not really sure what I'm not sure what our answer to that is going to be, but we'll see when we get there.
Yeah, so we are going to answer your question, Lenny, just so you know. And doing it on a trainer would be the opposite of what my optimal race would be. So I'm just going to leave it right there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep this slightly on topic because we have a lot to cover.
Yeah. Training for 100 miles, recovering for 100 miles.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked about how the recovery was, just like what this took out of us.
Allison asks, your normal races are 2 to 3, sometimes 4 or 5 hours. How did your training change to prepare for a 10+ hour race? Did you do a lot of long rides? We saw some. Were there more?
Sorry. Oh, that was part of the question.
It just totally blocked me out.
Okay, it's fine. I'm going to control the paper from here on because Macky's jumping around a lot.
Okay. I mean, that was about training.
Right. Okay. It's fine. We'll have this conversation later, not on the live stream. Okay. So do we want to talk about the recovery or do we want to answer this question? Sorry, I'm stuck now.
Oh, I was just reading your headline.
Okay.
That's why we were training / recovering for 100 miles.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, guys. Sid
I was queuing Mackie up for a whole thing that I know he wants to talk about, and he just totally went in another direction, which is fine. So we'll go this way.
Sorry, you had a plan, and I screwed up your plan. I apologize. It will never happen again.
It'll probably happen in like 5 minutes. Fine. Yeah. So basically, this was easily twice as long as most of the races that we did this year. I think a little bit the theme of this training discussion is that I did a lot more long rides and Mackie didn't. And we think that has a lot to do with why I had more fun at Marji Gesick than Mackie did.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And we're going to get in the next video we do, we're going to have a little bit more specifics on like the hours that we put in because I don't have that on the top of my head. I know I did that really long ride with Bo, like 80-mile gravel.
8-9 hours.
Yeah, so that was 8-9 hours. I did the 12-hour solo. Those are 2 things that Mackie didn't do. And I think I also just was able to put in more hours in pretty much every race I did because it took me longer.
And you had some certain weeks that were either bigger than mine or weeks that I was doing something else that were fairly big weeks. The last time I looked at just like Strava's annual summary thing, Sid had done like 10% more hours than I did this year, like had ridden 10% more hours than I did.
Yeah.
So I think that does make a difference, did make a difference. And to answer Allison's question, like we did do some long rides. I did not do a ton of them. And I think my longest was the 6-hour at Galisteo. And I might have done one 5 or 6 hour like endurance ride, but I I didn't do a lot of long ones, whereas Sid did do quite a few more long days than I did, and I think that was probably the right decision.
And just sort of like generally, I think someone was like, what was your training like the 3 months before? I mean, we did try to do volume for this for sure. We did more volume this year than we ever have, which basically just means more hours out there on the bike. I did a bit more than Mackie. I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You did more hours than me, long rides.
Yeah.
What did our training look like 3 months leading up?
I guess what I'm saying is you don't need to ride for 13 hours to be able to race for 13 hours. Like you can always exceed a little bit what you did in training. And actually you can exceed a lot of it what you did in training. And Mackie did. Like you
basically
struggled a bit, but you absolutely performed well, and you still got the buckle, which was the goal.
And I basically doubled the longest ride I had done. So like you can do a lot more than what you've trained for. It's just the more rides you've done close to that length, the less painful it's going to be, or like maybe the more mentally and physically prepared you're going to be for those. So, okay. You wanted to set me up for a...
That kind of answers the question we had of like, how do you train to be on the bike for 12 plus hours? And then riding 6 to 8 hours and then stretching on race day is definitely like one way to do it.
And by stretching, Sid means riding 6 to 8 hours and then like pushing yourself beyond that.
Although that's not a terrible idea either.
You should probably also stretch after you're doing 6 to 8 hour rides. I'm going to real quick look at these while you read the next question. Scott, thank you for the super chat, asks, I've always wondered how conscious of you are how conscious are you guys of your positions during the race or any race, or do you finish with a general idea and have to wait for the results to be sure? I would say it depends a little bit on how many people are racing and how close to the front of that you are. So like for me, I almost always know about where I was with it, about where I am within a place or two, just because I'm usually more towards the front and, you know, therefore it's easier for me to tell where I am. For Sid at smaller races with fewer women, she usually has a pretty good idea of where she is because she's like, there's like, you know, 10 other women or 5 other women or whatever. And I know.
Like this race was pretty obvious because like when Christy and I were together at the beginning, like everyone was like, you're the first women, you know, so like then we kind of knew it's like, okay, it's the two of us.
We're the 2 first women.
And I think Breck Epic, I never had any idea. Like even when we're putting the places in there on the video, I'm like, I think I was like here, but then like did this person pass me later? So
and I think the thing there is that not only was it a huge women's field, but you were mixed in with guys. Because obviously if it was like only a women's field, you might have been able to like see people ahead of you and be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, I'm like 12th or something. Whereas when it's 12 women mixed in with 100 guys, you're like, I could be anywhere. It's very hard to tell men versus women. Also, thanks to Ride Beside for the super chat. What about doing all of the 100 ultra events in one season? It would be a great goal going forward since you knocked it out on your first 100. I'm gonna let you answer that one. While you do that, I'm gonna update our link on Patreon because I realized it's the wrong link.
I don't think you're gonna catch Mackie doing an entire season of 100 milers anytime soon. I actually don't think it's even possible to do all of them in one season. I'm not sure like which, like you could do a full like national ultra endurance series, but there are some good races that overlap a little bit, for sure. So at least in terms, especially because the recovery is so much more for these longer ones. So I don't think that we have other things we want to do. I definitely want to do more races like this. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think this would ever be like all we do.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Sorry, I'm just trying to update this.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we're going to have to start moving a little quicker through these because we got some juicier questions towards the end that we want to make sure we get to. I'm seeing some questions about fueling in here as well. Someone asked how many miles did we ride for the whole season. I honestly don't have that, but it will be in the video next week because we're going to kind of dive into the data a little bit more. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Fueling, yeah. Couple people basically just commented that my fueling seemed to go a lot better for Marji than earlier in the season. It definitely did.
And the Mackies.
It definitely did. I will say, I'm not sure I like cracked the code on anything. I just think honestly, in some ways, like We were not at altitude. Like, I think the
Mhm.
high altitude was a problem in Breck for the fueling. Like the really high, like over 10,500 feet was hard, and it wasn't hot. At least not as hot as when I did the 12 hours. So things were definitely better. I did add some stuff to kind of repertoire, especially to increase the sodium. So I was eating meat sticks, which have a little bit of protein as well to kind of keep you feeling a little bit more satiated. Doing the Never Second gels, which have a pretty good hunk of sodium in there as well as calories.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, a lot of scratch high carb, a lot of bars, a lot of chews. I made a bunch of rice cakes, and then I couldn't get myself to eat them. So
also, we just looked through the numbers, so I vaguely remember them. I think we decided Sid ate like 4,000-ish calories over the course of the race, and the burn from the power meter was about 7,500. If you add another 1,000 for like the upper body work, etc., that's putting you like less than 50% replenishment. And so both of us feel like she could do more if she does this again, like significantly more calories and like maybe fade even less or like get stronger over the course of the event. So there's definitely room for improvement for Sid and a lot of room for improvement for this guy.
Okay, so this is a question I think is kind of an interesting one. This is a more general question about fueling. I understand, it's from Mark, I understand you are consuming easy to convert to energy carbs during the race. You guys eat fantastic before and after. Is there anyone in these races that purely relies on pre-stored energy, so purely drawing on fat reserves or a keto-based approach? This is actually a question we've gotten a lot. People are kind of scared of sugar and scared of the amount of sugar that we eat during races. I think, so he asked, is that even doable in your opinion? And I think it depends a lot, entirely on your definition of doable. So the issue with fueling with fat is that it does not work at high intensities. And especially for a race like Marji Gesick that has a lot of punchy climbs with a pretty fast start. And just honestly, like we were racing, like we were going hard.
When we race, we go hard. We are not in fat burning.
No.
Or ranges, intensity ranges, effort ranges. And we actually did, when we did the VO2 testing, you can actually tell where you switch from fat burning to carb burning, sugar burning. And that point is really low. So like you would have to be, I mean,
you have to keep your heart rate under like 140 or something for me. I think
for me it was, I think it might even have been lower than that. Like you basically have to be riding at like maybe endurance pace.
Yeah.
To stay in that range. Possibly slower.
So I think that's the sort of fundamental misunderstanding that the general public has with like keto stuff. Because I think if we were all training for the zombie apocalypse or a situation where food is not available, then becoming fat adapted would be a wonderful idea.
Yes.
I think the reality is we are training to perform at a high level in a situation where our competitors have access to plenty of carbs. And carbs are a performance enhancing drug, a legal one. So, yeah.
So if you want to go faster, if you want to have the fuel to fuel your race efforts, sugar is what you need, essentially. I mean, that's sort of a very basic way to put it, but also the truth.
Someone asked what we did with our checkpoint duck. It's right here. We got it right here. Someone's stalked us on Strava and figured out our stats since we don't know them.
Yep.
4,400 miles this year for me and 4,500 for MACKY.
Yep.
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Which is a pretty decent jump to last year, I believe, especially considering that it is mid-October.
Yeah.
So good job, us. All right, what's next?
We had a couple questions about aid stations and just general aid, and that's very reasonable because we were very confused on how the aid worked going into this. Like, we're like, do we need to be fully self-supported? And then we talked to people who did the race, and they're like, no, I have my aid crew in 10 different spots, and we're like, but basically, I think you can. My interpretation of the rules, and Todd, if you're here in the chat, please do weigh in.
Yep. Feel free to correct us.
Is that you can get support as long as your support crew is out there helping other people and like not being jerks.
Yeah.
Like it's not a World Cup pit crew sort of situation. Like you need to be conscious of other people. You need to support other people. Like basically bring stuff. Like I had my parents out there. They had tons of water and tools, and they were helping people who had issues out there. And so that does allow you to get the support you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as Kevin just said in the comment, all support must remain neutral. And like by that, it means that anybody who needs help, your support crew is willing to help them. And like Jim and Ellen were amazing, and we're definitely there, like cheering people on and pushing people to help them get started when they'd stopped, and like helping people with blister. Like they were there. They were just helping everybody, and they were also helping us, which made a huge difference.
Yeah, and so I think the confusion we had going into this was like, does that mean they have to provide exactly the same support to everyone else? Like, can we get a pack hand up, or do we need to like stop and fill bottles? Like From what we could see going on out there, like anything goes, really. Like people were definitely getting new packs, like picking up their own bottles, like all this. I think if that's not the intention, like Todd needs to like make some clarifying rules, because that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I think honestly that it seems like that works really well, and that like
everyone is
as
so
somebody
nice.
Pointed out, you could eat a season's worth of calories from all the help out there. Like literally,
yeah,
so many people are out there supporting. If you need something, you can just like roll up to someone and be like, "Hey, do you have a whatever?" And like they're gonna help. And so as long as your support crew is willing to work with that same ethos of like, if I'm out here, I'm gonna help whoever needs help. That's great.
And I would say people were absolutely doing that.
Amazing.
Like people were
so cool.
super nice the entire way.
Yeah.
There was so much food out there, all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next?
I think we can get into some gear questions, which I think we should just sort of rush through this a little bit. Or not rush through this, just move through it.
Some of us are more worried about the time than others.
I know we got like 5 pages here,
That's
and this
true,
is where we're really going to get in the weeds on page 4. So,
okay, fair enough.
Gear questions from Dave. How much time do you save with your setup? Our bikes are around 24-ish pounds in total compared to a 26 or 28 pound bike. Carlos follows that up. How much time, but actually watts do you save? You know, that's hard. We don't have the math on that for sure.
I mean, I think the best way to think about it is you can essentially calculate how many watts are required to move your body weight plus your bike weight up a hill a certain amount, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I weigh about 165 pounds as an example. My bike weighs about 25, so that'd be 190. That means every 1.9 pounds of weight that I can save is worth 1%. Well, over the course of, let's just call it 10 hours because that makes the math easy. That's 600 minutes. So 1.9 pounds is worth 6 minutes over 10 hours.
Which is a lot.
Like, it's a lot, but also 1.9 pounds is a lot to get off of a bike. And like, you also want to make sure that, as Carlos said, reliability. And that's also the thing is like, if you break something, well, the rule for Marji is if you break something, you have to fix it if you want to keep, like, you can't swap wheels, you can't swap frames, you can't swap bikes. Like, so you need to make sure your bike and equipment are reliable enough that it's going to get you all the way through the race. And then you want to make it as light as you can, because the lighter it is. Yeah. And
I mean, this is just mountain bike racing.
Totally.
XC racing, any race, that balance of how light can I go and like what are the sacrifices I'm willing to make with comfort. And I ended up running trail pedals essentially, which are heavier, but sort of saved my feet over 109 miles. So yeah, all those kind of trade-offs.
And you know, a lot of people have asked why we don't ride heavier tires, like, because, you know, thicker casing tires. And it's because they weigh more and they don't roll as well. And like those things both slow you down. And for me personally, I'm willing to take the risk of a lighter weight tire and risk having a mechanical for that time savings. And most of the time that pays off, and sometimes the time it doesn't pay off. And that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Which one am I? Douglas asks, during the night, did you wish you had your frame mounted light was brighter and covered more vertical or horizontal angles? So basically your front light, did you wish it had
the lights
more...
were great.
Yeah.
Honestly, the outbound lights that we have cast a pretty wide. I don't know how it compares to other things on the market, but honestly, I had way more light than I needed. Like I was not out there for that long in the dark, so I had it on full blast, and I felt like I was like driving a semi truck. Like it was so bright.
I think also in the video you can't tell how much light it is because the GoPro, like, it adjusts to the ISO in the center, and so it's going to crop it. Like when you're there in person, you're like, it seems like daylight. I'm fine.
So bright. And if you doubt this, go watch someone else's video from Marji Gesick and watch their night footage, because the outbound lights are so much better. I was like watching someone, I was like, man, all our night footage is gonna be terrible. And then I'm watching mine, I'm like, I can see everything. It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, super happy with outbound lights.
Totally.
So this was a question specifically for me, but I think we can both answer it because it falls into basically how do you manage chafing and how do you manage bathroom breaks? So
I feel like those are two different questions. Let's answer
the second one first. Down there question. Yeah.
The second one, how do we manage bathroom breaks, is we didn't.
Yeah.
Neither of us had to pee or poop the entire race, which in hindsight is a little terrifying.
It's a little alarming, but I think as long as you're like taking in enough fluid to offset what you are losing, that's okay. I did wear, Primal has a pair of bibs, blanking on which, I think it's the Atheros SR that has a clip on the back. So I definitely recommend the ladies looking into like bibs that you can pull down or that have a clip like this, because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Especially if you're wearing a pack and a camera and all this stuff. It's like I could not stop to take.
No.
Yeah, that was not gonna happen.
That was
the chafing.
Chafing.
Ooh,
that was real, my friends.
There, yeah,
that was real.
The chafing was bad. I think we're a little spoiled living in the desert. That just does not happen.
Not to the same extent.
So if we were to do this again, I think we would go with a different, like we use chamois butter at the beginning.
So basically, I'm gonna try not to be a little too graphic here, but I was chafing on my like upper part of my butt cheeks, because that's where like this, you're sitting on the bike saddle, and obviously like your crotch chafes, and that's where we put the chamois cream.
Yeah.
But turns out your butt cheeks are resting on the saddle also, and like that was chafing, and I had never. Actually, that's not true. I think I had it with my Eversting, but I forgot about that because that was multiple years ago. And like, it was not good. Like, you don't really notice it while you're racing, and then you get to the end of the race and you're like, oh no, this is not good. And so what I would do, if I were to do this again, is I would use a thicker chamois cream, which Squirt makes one called Barrier Balm. And it's like,
it's not something you want to put on every day. Let me just put it that. It's too sticky.
It's really sticky, but I would use that on the like upper part where it chafed, and I think it would stay and keep that chafing. It would help minimize that chafing. That'd make a big difference. I also got chafing where my helmet was touching and where my glasses were touching, which bald guy problems, part of it.
Do you recommend hair?
Yes. Just make sure that you don't forget your hair for the event. It was rough.
Yeah, so that is actually a great segue into our next topic, which is one of the most common questions, which I have paraphrased as, why was Mackie such a grump?
All right, I'm going to interrupt you real quick and say, if you are in here, please hit the thumbs up button, because we have over 500 people in here, which is definitely a record for us, which is awesome. But hit the thumbs up button. Let's get some more people in here. This is really cool. Because of the 515 people, only 180 of them, 195 hit the like button.
So I'm just laughing. 906 event tip, buy a frozen pasty and sit on it on the drive home.
Ah,
there you go.
There you go. Then you don't have to nuke it when you get home.
Gross.
Gross.
Okay, so
Why
first
was
of all,
Mackie a grump?
let me read some questions. Was
Okay.
Mackie hurting especially? Margie seemed to throw Mackie off his mental game a bit while Sid was dialed in her headspace. That was wild to watch, but nice to see that Mackie is human too. How much of your inner monologue would you say you would say out loud if you weren't recording? This is the first time I saw Mackie sort of lose his cool and have a hard time finding the drive towards the end. Why is that? Okay, so I will say in Mackie's defense that I think a little bit the reaction to this is the way that we edited the video. That way that I
Sid
edited the video. But I think there were just like a couple moments that were too, I couldn't resist when we're both at 5 hours and you were like giving this whole list of things that hurt. And I was like, I feel good for 5 hours. I was like, that has to be edited next to each other.
And it's, yeah. No, your editing on that was brilliant. But also, and like, sure, that was part of why it was kind of so obvious. But the truth is, I did struggle on this, and
Yeah.
I don't know exactly why. And we have a couple of theories. One is just that, as we talked about earlier, I have not done as many long rides this year as Sid has. My races tend to be shorter because I finish them faster when they're distance races. So overall, I just have not spent as much time doing long rides this year. I think that was part of it. I think the other part is that I think the amount of fuel and calories I take in for a shorter race kind of keeps my reserves up or like dropping slowly enough that I can make it 5 or 6 hours before I'm depleted. But this went beyond that. And so I think I actually need to increase my calories to above 400 an hour if I can pull that off, to really try to stay on top of it, because I don't think I ate enough calories. And I think that's part of why I was a crump.
Yeah.
And
I think like the thing to remember is like you had a harder time mentally, but like you still got the job done.
Yeah.
And I think that we all have days like that that are better or worse.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I was relentlessly positive for this entire race. I think what I did do well was just kind of stay focused on like what I was doing in the moment. And like we had some we could like edit in me being like, oh, it's a beautiful day. And that makes it seem like I was like, yay, the entire time, which is not entirely fair. Like there were definitely hard moments.
But still, like just talking to you afterwards, it was pretty clear that like you felt pretty good the whole time.
Very
like,
steady, I would say.
And I just like, I felt good for about 5 or 6 hours. And then I just like, and I think the fact that it was that duration of time makes me think that it's one of those, or possibly both of those things, just not having done as many long rides and needing more calories.
Yeah, I think we like underestimated your calorie need, or like what would happen when you fully go through those glycogen stores.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
yeah, it's because you passed on the brat. Only explanation. The brat was amazing. We've had so many comments of
thoroughly
like,
regretting
you missed out on the
thoroughly
brat.
regretting missing out on the brat.
Okay. All right, now we're getting into This is a question.
This is a question. All right. Should women have a different cutoff time? And that was the question you wanted me to ask, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just make sure
Well,
I was on the right
these were
spot.
just some of the things people had said.
Some people said, why don't they have a male and female buckle time? Considering no women had ever gone under 12 hours, should it be extended to 13 hours? Is it really possible for a pro woman to go under 12 hours? I think the organizers should have a male and female cutoff for 12 and 13 for the women. Cutoff times seem biased against women.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Sid take this one.
I have some thoughts on this. I think first, like the last comment there, like cutoff times seem biased against women. I mean, I think you could make that argument at any race that has a cutoff time.
Totally. Or a buckle time.
Or a buckle time. Yeah.
A cutoff time also, but
right.
Buckle
well, that's
time
what I'm saying. Yeah. And I personally feel like it should not be changed. I think a little bit of that is coming from, like, to me, that's a cool challenge. Like, I like that there's something that I couldn't do, even though I had a perfect pretty perfect
Mhm.
race day. I also think like that's just not the standard for buckle times. Like Leadville buckle, big buckle is 9 hours. And like
Pretty much all the races that have a buckle time, the buckle time is the same regardless of the competitor's gender, age, etc., category, whatever. Like if there's a buckle time, it's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Marji, I think people get upset about that because no women have ever done it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's impossible. There are definitely women out there who absolutely could beat me by an hour on that course. Not that many, but some. For sure. So it's definitely not impossible.
I think also somebody left a really interesting comment, which I don't remember where, and we didn't write it down. But they calculated what the buckle time would be for women, and I think they based it on like percentage of women who would have gotten a buckle compared to the percentage of guys who got a buckle. And I think it was like over 14 hours for women.
Yeah.
And so that like changes it would be different.
Yeah, and I think, something that I've thought about with this is definitely Barkley Marathon, which someone wrote a really well phrased comment on our YouTube video about this as well. And a woman finally finished the Barkley Marathon this year for the first time. And I mean, it was just incredible, right? Like that was an incredible effort. I think it took her 3 or 4 years of doing it. And I think that inspired a lot more people and probably like got a lot more young women and girls interested in ultra running than if they had said, oh, like women can't do this in 60 hours. Like let's move it back to 90 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be kind of a shame. At the same time, I do understand some of the arguments for changing it. The women's participation is pretty low in Marji Gesick. I think there were 19 finishers and maybe like 200 male finishers, give or take. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So, I think it's also important to recognize like what we're talking about here is like it's pretty darn cool, but it's a piece of metal, right? And like I'm very, very like we need to have equal payout because money is real, right? And that's really important. They do have equal payout. Everybody got $1.
You mean both the winners?
Both winners got $1. So I think if you're looking at a situation where, if getting that buckle meant huge sponsorship opportunities or whatnot, then like maybe we'd have to have
where everybody turned around and sold their buckle for $1 million.
Right.
Then it'd be different.
But that's not the situation. And it's a time goal. I think it'll come. I think someone will get it. I can think of a few people off the top of my head who could do it.
I think someone could get it. Topic number 8. Could Sid buckle?
Right.
We might as well transition to that one.
Absolutely. Like the question. Actually, I would say it's not a question. Most people have been like, just go back next year, you'll get a buckle. And it's like, okay, guys, that is not that easy. 57 minutes.
Appreciate your guys' faith in Sid. I also have much faith in Sid. But yeah, I think the truth is 57 minutes. Calculate this out. It's about 7%. 7% faster is a lot faster. Like when you look at like World Cup racing or, top 10 at like a big race, we're talking like 1%. Like we're talking really small differences in like the podium or even like the whole race. 7% is a lot. So it's a lot.
Yeah, someone said there's a good number of women who could get the buckle, but they're over in Europe racing UCI for more money or racing Lifetime Grand Prix for a lot more money. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be one way to get that buckle to come down is offer prize money.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other way, which was explored at Breck Epic with the Breck Epic Women's Tour, is to comp entries for women or women who could.
And that was very successful.
Very successful. I think the other one for Marji specifically would be to invite the people, let them in after the cutoff, or after the registration heyday.
Yeah.
Which I think that does happen a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, what would it take? What would I have to change to get a buckle? I think that's
We've discussed this a lot. Like we've talked about this.
Yeah.
And as somebody asked earlier, you know, how much time is knowing the course worth?
Something.
We've sort of guessed something in that like 20 to 25, 30 range. And I think even just
might be generous.
might be generous, but I mean, even just going back a second time to Marji and just having an overall idea of like what the course looks like, I think that would be beneficial. And then if you decided you wanted to go for a buckle, I think you'd want to go up there and spend some time and like get to know each section of the course so that there was less mental fatigue of like, oh no, I just missed a turn, or like, oh, is there a turn coming up? I can't go fast here. Like that whole thing. I think that would make a significant difference. I think the support, like, you didn't have much stop time. We calculated Sid's stop time at 10 minutes over 13 hours.
And it didn't even feel like 10 minutes, but that was sort of what Strava gave me as my moving time was 12:47. My race time was 12:57.
That's
that was
not much.
Swapping bladders in the packs, picking up some food, swapping lights at that last section.
So there are things we could do to make that faster, like do pack swaps instead of bladder swaps, because then you just like unclip, put the other one on. You wouldn't have to change the battery in your GoPro. We'd have another GoPro attached to the pack. But we're not talking a ton of time. Like,
well, I mean, you
5 minutes.
It would be very hard to not stop at all.
Yeah.
So there's just really not that much to take out of that. And I think that's sort of my reflection is I had a really good day. Yeah. And so it's hard to look at that and think, where does an hour come out of that? That's not to say like I don't think it's impossible. I think it would be a really big reach for next year because I do think it's like gains year over year to be faster. Someone said like in the chat, you've made huge gains in your fitness the past few years. How does that project from now to next fall? I mean, I think the reality is you never know. Yeah. And I have made huge gains. Part of that was because I was off the bike for 18 months. And this is my third season of actually being able to train solidly. At some point that will slow down. Yeah. Tapers off. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. So when that will happen, I don't know. I mean, I think it already has happened to a degree. So 7% is a pretty big ask. Yeah. I think if I had a really bad bonk or some sort of mechanical issue or spent a lot of time stopped for some reason, I would be like more optimistic. Yeah. Yeah.
If you'd lost 20, 30 minutes for some reason, mechanical, bonk, etc., then it's like, okay, I need to make 27 minutes. But having a good day, it's a lot of time. I want to say thank you to Maestro for the super chat. This is their first super chat on a live stream. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Special.
Anything else on can you buckle?
I don't think so. Unless we got any.
So are you going back to Marji? Because that's the next question.
We are not committing to anything in this live stream.
That's fair. That's fair. We have posted our rough tentative 2025 schedule on Patreon for those of you who are curious. Hold on.
We got the 906 Adventure team is in the chat.
Just
got some eyeballs.
Found
this out. I will say a challenge for us with Marji is the registration happens pretty early. We have to balance a lot of things with our schedule. Yeah. Just sponsors. The fact that Mackie and I sometimes want to do different things.
The fact that there are so many cool races. We are in such a lucky time, all of us. And that there are so many cool races happening, like Marji.
Yeah, and there's also races that haven't even announced their dates yet, which is a pain in our butt.
Yeah, it is.
The nice thing is races like Marji do often reserve some pro or media entries, so it's not. We could probably still get in at this point. We are not going to commit to anything. right now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of like soul searching and thinking to do over the next month of like what next year is going to look like, bigger picture.
Yes.
So, and this is where everyone starts pitching. They're like,
yeah, pitch away, my friends, pitch away. Okay, what's next? That's
I think, wait,
nice...
this is a fun question though. What was your
Okay.
favorite and least favorite part of the course?
The beginning and the last 20 miles.
Wait, that was your favorite? Was the last?
Favorite was the beginning. Least favorite was the last 20 miles because I felt good at the beginning. I felt lousy at the end.
He's very basic.
I mean, it's just the truth. Like, I was having fun until I was just like, I'm done. And I don't know what exactly it was, but like, I was done.
Yeah, I don't know the trail names well enough to say what a favorite part was. There was a very fun section in the South Marquette section that was like pretty early enough where it still felt pretty good, and that was like
that really rocky kind of extended downhill. That was really cool. I got to follow Matt down that. That was awesome.
I think my least favorite part was the super sandy, like it was single track in the first Ramba section. It was just very steep and sandy, and I couldn't make up a bunch of things. But I was like, I feel like I could make it up this, and then I was sliding out, and that was also, I think, when I like went a little too long without eating. It started feeling pretty not good. Yeah. So
turns out calories, my friends, make a world of difference.
It really does make a difference.
Just gonna throw that out there. Shout out to Rock Mumbles for the super chat.
Awesome. So much.
Our last set of questions are related to what is next.
This is also just kind of like, the random miscellaneous questions.
True,
so check your random miscellaneous questions in the chat. And
we might ask them. If you want us to ask or answer them, super chat's a lot more noticeable.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there. Jason asked, what was your recovery routine following Marji, and how close do you feel you are to your peak game? And would being blasted with water guns help? Being blasted with water guns when? Maybe, probably. How was our recovery routine? So we went and visited Sid's aunt and uncle who live on a lake in Wisconsin.
It was really nice.
And it was perfect.
Yeah, we basically spent 2 days getting in and out of cold water. We felt pretty rough for a solid 2 days.
Yeah.
And then we drove home, which was a 26-hour drive. So
not great for recovery.
I took a full 2 weeks off. Mackie got convinced to race Road Apple 2 weeks after, and he did.
I had fun.
Pretty good.
It's good.
And then, like last week, we decided to go ride for 15 hours on the Continental Divide. So that story's coming because we're like, that wasn't long enough.
Apparently. Liz asks, would you think about doing the 200-mile version of Marji Gesick?
She clearly didn't watch the part where you were like, 200 miles, no thank you. I think luckily we have like 5 years to think about that. So
200 miles, no thank you. That's my answer. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Sess asks, will you do it again, and what would you do differently? Well, we've already answered. We will probably do it again sometime.
It's just when.
We just don't know when. Would you do it differently? I mean,
I think we kind of touched on this already. Like, obviously, the fueling was not perfect. Obviously, I need to be 7% faster.
Yeah, there are improvements you could make, but it was a pretty darn good day.
Yeah.
Jeremy asks, now that the season is over, what was a high point for the season and a low point for the season? I mean, for me, a high point was Meg Avalanche. I really enjoyed that race. I really enjoyed that format. I really liked the mass start racing downhill. That was so cool. Love that.
Yeah. I think low point for me was probably Breck Epic or right after because I felt terrible. We definitely had some sort of bug.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a hard one. It's an amazing race. I think there's a decent chance we will be back for that one. I definitely feel like I have some unfinished business. That was not my best work. Not the best I felt.
Yeah. And it kind of sucks when you do a race and you just feel like you didn't live up to your own expectations. Like, it wasn't even that we were like, or at least for me, it wasn't like I was like, I raced terribly and have never done so badly. Like it wasn't even like
No,
I just didn't do as well as I felt like I could have.
I was actually like reasonably pretty pleased with the result from Breck Epic in that field, but just oh man, I did not control the controllables, as
Yeah.
I would say. I did not eat. I did not. Anyway, it was
Yeah,
rough.
It was rough. It was probably my low also.
I also had
just
some
feeling
issues
lousy.
afterwards with a saddle sore situation that lagged on and was
Yeah.
just really unpleasant.
Yep.
Do not recommend.
Yeah.
So that was a low point. I mean, I think there were a couple high points for sure. One of them was definitely finishing Marji Gesick for sure. Like that finish was super emotional and just like it was dark. It was epic.
Yeah. That was really cool. And all the people cheering and like the music and Marji did a great job of having a really good, exciting finish line.
Finish at 8:30 p.m. at night,
which was cool. Real quick, thanks to Spiritual Spatula for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Don Diego Rains asks, do you feel Los Alamos and New Mexico as a whole are good training grounds for pro riding? And then shout out to Biker Joe for the super chat.
So yeah, I think definitely good training ground here for sure. I mean, we are at altitude. Our house is 7,200 feet above sea level, which is what in meters?
Like 2,300, 2,200, something like that meters.
Yeah, and I think Los Alamos specifically was very like the kind of riding we do here was very helpful for Marji Gesick. I think not to get into like telling people how to train for this race, but I do think a lot of people come to this race like they live in flatter climate areas because it's Michigan, right? So like a lot of places are pretty flat and non-technical, and like we have a lot of punchy technical climbing, and it's different than Marji for sure. Like we go for like 2 hours, but it's still like you have to do a lot of power moves.
Practicing like hard effort, recover, hard effort, recover, hard effort, recover is really beneficial for Marji. And there are a certain number of pro riders who have lived in New Mexico or trained in New Mexico. We are not quite like southern New Mexico or southern Arizona where we don't get a winter. We do get a winter. But for me, I like winter, and I like having to sometimes do other things instead of only ride, because it sort of allows me to like mentally reset a little bit, because it was a long season. Our first race was January 12th and my last race was October 6th. So that's like 10 months out of the year.
And I think that the question in the chat of how do you get over the big event hangover? Big event hangover is real for sure.
100%.
I think first of all, just like acknowledging that is real. Like I definitely think we are still a little bit in that. Like we feel motivated to ride again, but I think we're still a little bit in the phase of like, what's the focus going to be for next year? Like what?
And we want to ride, not necessarily go and do like a ton of racing right now.
Yeah, and I think part of that is like you take time off. And we basically are taking all of October off from structured training. So we've actually been riding a decent bit, but we don't have any intervals. We don't have any structured workouts. We are getting back in the gym a little bit, but basically just kind of giving ourselves a little bit of time for that mental reset. Like you're saying.
I think, that's the key, is acknowledging that like you did do something hard and crazy, and there is like a dip. There's like the high, and then there's kind of a crash. Accept that, ride it out, and then say like, okay, what's next? What's going to get me excited to like get back and, ride again and train again? Because, and that's why having a goal for the following season is so important. So, shout out to Mike for the super chat. And a huge thank you to Jeff Morris for the super chat.
That's super generous.
Really appreciate. I'm really glad to hear that we can inspire. That's definitely our goal. Okay, question from Jim. I'm gonna let you summarize. You've read through these better than I have.
Yeah, so basically, like some events you do repeatedly and some every few years. Where does Marji Gesick fall in that? Basically, like why do we do some things year after year? I mean, I think a little bit first of all, we don't know about Marji Gesick, as we said
Yeah.
earlier, so we're not really sure where that's gonna fall in. I do feel like we definitely will do it again. Honestly, it's not easy to get to for us. It was a
Yeah.
26-hour drive. Had very bad luck with airlines this year, so
Yeah.
not super excited about making a ton of plans for next year where we are
Flying.
Yeah.
So any more than we have
I mean,
to.
convenience definitely falls into it. That's why
Yeah.
you've seen us do Moab Rocks so many years. I mean, it's an excellent event and it's easy for us to get to. And like, we now know the trails pretty well. So it's not like, oh, we have to go a week early and pre-ride or whatever.
Yeah. We know the promoter is going to do a good job. They're going to
Yeah.
put on a good event. There's going to be other competition there. Like,
and like, we would love to do Single Track 6 again, which is like the same promoter, but we haven't because it's very far away.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely like, there's also like, we try to do something new and exciting every year. So depending on when that event is, like, we will be going to New Zealand in March of next year. So we may not make it to Moab Rocks this year.
Yeah.
We're still holding out hope. I think Mackey's insane, but that's
well, I think like Sid was saying, part of it's convenience. Part of it is balancing our energy. Is like, if you want to race bikes well, you can't race every single race. And like, that's my tendency. I want to race every race, and you just can't if you want to do well. And so you have to like give yourself time to recover. You have to have breaks during the season where like you have less structure, you're not riding as much. And sometimes you need to take breaks from racing so that you can put in big training blocks, because it's hard to race and then immediately go into a big training block. So it's balancing all these things of like racing, training, recovery, mental aspect, burnout, all that. And it's hard.
It really is an energy balance thing for us too, more even than the time, because we know what these events take out of us. And that's why when someone asked earlier, they were like, are you going to do a full like ultra year? I think probably not, because that would just take away from so many other things, because the recovery is so much harder for those than
no, it's really
for shorter events.
Well, and same with stage races. Like, we can't do a stage race a week. I mean, partially because they, if it's a 5-day stage race, they'd give you 2 days off, but also the recovery from a stage race is much longer than a recovery from a single day event, assuming it's not a 13-hour single day event. Yeah. But like, so you can only do a certain number of events throughout the year, and you just have to figure out which ones you want to prioritize and which ones you want to train through, and which, etc. So, shout out to DataGirl8888. Nice. Congrats on an amazing season. Love your channel. Hi to your parents. Right. Thank you.
We'll pass that along.
We will pass that along.
We tried to get them to come on the live stream, but they didn't want
to. Daniel asks, has your YouTube career affected your relationship with the rest of the mountain bike community? Competitive mountain bike community.
Oh, that's an interesting.
That is an interesting question. Yeah.
I would say, like, for the most part, I don't think so. Yeah. We have occasionally encountered people that had a bit of an attitude about us having the sponsorship and support we did when we weren't like the fastest people in the room.
Yeah.
See the belt buckle. And I think, I can understand where people are coming from with that. I also think at the end of the day, sponsorship is about return on investment. So creators often do well there. I would say, like, we definitely have a lot of friends that we race with, and like, I would especially say that we've, like, in the endurance racing, like, just encountered a lot of really nice, good people.
Yep.
It was funny, like, at Brack Epic, some of the girls I was racing with, they'd be like, are you local? Because like, everyone was cheering me by name, and I'd be like, no, not exactly. Like, or like, wow, everyone knows you, but yeah, no, I don't think it's negatively affected things.
No. And on that note, thank you to all of you who do support us, whether it's watching our videos or on Patreon or the super chats or coming out to races and cheering for us. Like, it makes a big difference when people recognize you and cheer for you when you're racing.
And that was all of Marji Gesick for us. Like, so many people knew our names and were out there, and it was really cool. Yeah. So thank you, everyone.
Scott asked how often you get recognized at races, and that's actually something that's been really cool this year. Is I feel like that has this year kind of like the balance tipped, where we're starting to get recognized pretty regularly at like races and events, and like that is so cool just to feel like people are watching and enjoying our videos and our channel.
Yeah. So Mike Payne says, I'm a top level off-road race team for the Baja 1000.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome. We consider ourselves a marketing company that races. We do win, but marketing is the bottom line. I mean, I think that is true in the bike world as well. And it makes sense, right? Like companies are in it to sell product, and it's a harsh world we live in, but if no one knows your name, it doesn't really matter how many races you win.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw back to
Lenny
saying,
says Los Alamos mountain bike community loves us.
Thanks.
Yay.
Thanks, Lenny. The other aspect is if you want to support us and Patreon doesn't make sense for you, whatever, like we do have our affiliate links listed out. And so like if you purchase something that you've seen us use and like we're planning to purchase it anyway, or find it interesting and because we mentioned it, if you use our link or our code, like that lets our sponsors know that we are doing our jobs and therefore we can keep doing our jobs.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the other question was what would be our dream race that we would design.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't know if we're
Lenny
going to
had asked
have
that
a succinct answer for this, but we've definitely like kicked around the idea of like more technical mass start racing.
Yeah.
So like up and down technical.
Something like, okay, so Lifetime, which a lot of people have asked about. Lifetime is basically like gravel. Okay, so if you have gravel, cross country, and enduro, Lifetime is like right here between gravel and
it's like here near the gravel.
That's this side.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm looking at the beer version.
Yeah, so Lifetime is like over here by the gravel side. What we want is if this is cross country and this is enduro, we want something like
right in the middle.
Right in the middle of those two.
You know,
you need the fitness to like go up the hill fast, but you have to have the technical skills to go up the hill fast and go down the hill fast.
Maybe something technical enough that like you're not racing an enduro bike, but like you're racing a trail bike.
Yeah, like you can't race a cross country bike.
Like I built up my RE Delano Peak this summer, and like I think we haven't even had it in a video yet, which I feel kind of bad about. Because I love it. It is so fun.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense for any of the racing we do because it's not an enduro bike and it's not. Yeah, it's not an XC bike. And someone says I feel like that's the actual spirit of enduro racing. Maybe it used to be, but I think what we're thinking is like lap racing or something with like technical the whole way. And someone says that's UCI cross country. I think it isn't really right now.
And the reason I say that is UCI cross country has gotten more technical, which is really cool.
It's super technical.
But if you look at it, it's definitely the people who can climb the fastest who win.
Yeah.
Like there's just no like the fastest climber, as long as you can descend, is going to win. And what we want is something where it's like you have to be equally good at climbing and descending, like compared to all mountain bikers, not just like compared to cross country mountain bikers, but that would be.
Yeah. And I think it would be fun. It'd be fun to see this in the UCI XC stuff, but like a little bit more technical climbing. Like I feel like there's really hard climbing because it's really, really steep, but it's not usually like interesting moves and stuff. You know, at least not what they show. I mean, it's hard to tell.
And somehow you'd want, or at least for me, what I would want is like longer descents, because right now it's like you can have a technical climb and a technical descent, but there's still going to be more time made on the climb than on the descent. So it's going to like weigh the descent or the climb more heavily.
Yeah.
So if it was like you descended 3 times as much as you climbed and it, like all of it was technical, both the up and the down,
that'd be cool.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, that's why I liked Meg Avalanche, is that it was a downhill race, but there was some pedaling and it was mass start. Like that's why I really enjoyed it, is because I like chasing people down, and you don't get to do that in like enduro, for example.
This is proof that 130, 140 trail biking is the best, most. Yeah, I mean, those are awesome bikes.
Yeah. If I could only have one bike and I wasn't racing, it'd be like a mid-sized trail bike like that. Yeah.
I think the problem for us is like most of the races we do, if it's a cross country race, way better.
Even if it's technical,
bike. If it's an enduro race, that's a little undergunned compared to the competition. Depends on the race.
Well, especially now, because someone's saying that's the actual spirit of enduro racing. I think that used to be true, but now so many of the races are they're multi-stage downhill races. Like you need a full face, you want a back protector, you're on like a big travel enduro bike, which are fun. Don't get me wrong, but like,
Yeah, and anything that's at a bike park is hard on a trail bike just because of the braking bumps and just the general
and
roughness.
the speed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like even if it's not the most. Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron asked, what bike would you choose for this? And it wouldn't be a cross
I mean,
country.
I think
bike.
the goal would be to like design a race that like Delano Peak size
Yeah.
bike would win.
Yeah.
All right, I think we need to start wrapping this up here, folks. We
Yep.
have, as expected, exceeded our hour.
Yes. If you have any final questions, feel free to throw them in there, especially super chats. We will answer those. But Sid's parents are making dinner because we made dinner the last couple of nights.
Yeah.
So it's getting to be dinner time.
It is dinner times.
Have we ridden fat bikes? Not yet. Something we do want to do at some
Fat
point.
bikes don't make a lot of sense where we live. We don't really have groomed trails, and like our snow is it kind of like turns into mud in certain areas really quickly. So then you're in danger of wrecking the trails, or it turns into like ice sheets, which like are not good even on fat bikes. So someone says like the Sid and Mackie race, we should do it. I mean, I think there's a very good possibility of that happening at some point, but like right now we want to, focus on our racing, and race promotion is a full-time job. Shout out to all the amazing race promoters out there.
Yeah. Someone asked, where was it? Does Ari get involved with what races we do? We are fortunate in that all of the sponsors that we work with understand what we are doing and basically are like, you guys do your thing. We love what you're doing, and we get to make our own schedules. And that's the person who mentioned that they're on a pro Baja team.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same thing. Like, we essentially are a marketing company.
Yeah.
And like, what's cool is our sponsors don't really care about our results. We care about our results.
Yeah.
So when we are racing and training and trying to get faster, we're doing that for us, which is really cool. And that was not always the case for us.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to be in. Shout out to Greg for the super chat.
Awesome.
First super chat. Also, appreciate that. Let's see. 6 more to get 600 attendees. I think we may have hit 600 at one point.
Don wants to race against my dad. Be careful what you wish for.
Oh yeah, be
Thanks
careful.
For the super chat. He's pretty quick.
He's pretty quick. But if you go to the El Paso Puzzler this January, you can race against Jim.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're not sure what distance he's doing yet, though. But
yeah, just wait till you see his name pop up on the registration, and then register for the same one. Any idea when the next jersey order will be open? On Monday.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. So we're going to do a very quick kind of flash sale of our Africa jerseys.
Yeah.
So, because we had a lot of people who were like, how can I get the Africa jerseys?
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that very soon. It will be pretty much like open and shut next week. So we will be posting a lot about that.
It's going to be fast. So gotta be on top of that.
Yep.
Cool. Shout out to Junwan. Hope I'm saying that right.
Thank you
for the super chat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And someone asked what race we're racing in New Zealand. We are doing the Volcanic Epic.
Oh, so excited.
Cool. All right.
So excited.
I think we're going to call it here.
Thanks. You're amazing. We love you guys. Any plans on expanding the family?
Not anytime
Not
soon,
in the near
Scott,
future.
But thank you for the super chat.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
You're the
for
best.
hanging out with us tonight.
Yep.
Everyone have a great evening. Awesome.
Buenos nachos, as they say.
Good night.